conversation with the bishop. And we begin this morning, with a very relaxing and a hymn that calls us to really just sit back and peek in the woods. And I guess it's very appropriate after many of us have had a very hectic last 13 days. So I see Bishop is putting us in the frame of mind to relax, refresh, and rejuvenate. And I must say welcome to, well, not welcome to Bishop, but I'm your host, Kisan Ferguson, with Bishop this morning for conversation with the Bishop. Good morning, Bishop.
Good morning, Kisan. You could never replace Rutina, but we thank you nonetheless for the welcome. Yes, you are quite right in saying that the words of this hymn put us in a certain frame of mind. Lord, for tomorrow and its needs I do not pray. I pray just for today. Help me to mortify my flesh. Help me to be kind in word and deed just for today. So it is in that spirit that I too say welcome. And I don't know how many of you may have had the opportunity to take up the link that was sent out for the funeral of Mr. Gabriel Okun, the father of Father Emmanuel Kufre. I had hoped that I would have gotten the link, but when I got up this morning, I couldn't find the link. So I didn't get a chance to see any of the funerals. So if any of you were able to do that and you want to call in and give us a step-by-step description of the funeral, that's great. What I did link up with this morning, and it was very, very interesting to watch, was what they call a coffin dance of funerals in parts of Africa. And I was quite eager to look at the whole thing because some years ago, one of my students at the seminary did a dissertation on the coffin dance in Suriname, and he had a video of it. And I really thought this was something from Suriname. And Suriname has a mixed up heritage, more mixed up than here. But it was almost the same thing, where the men are trained to dance with the casket. And in the African videos, it was no little coffin. It was a casket, probably quite heavy. And they danced. Now, there are stories around that, which was the focus of this young man's dissertation, where people say that, well, there's one particular story of a woman whose son had become a government minister. And, once you're a government minister, you have to pull out all the stops when your family member dies. So he was pulling out all the stops, but his mother had told him before she died, I want none of that thing with my coffin, so don't do any of that. But he decided to not obey his mother because he had to impress his friends. And it is said they picked up the mother's coffin to do the dance, and they couldn't move. The coffin had suddenly become quite heavy. And they put it down, and it became light again. They pick it up, it became heavy, as long as their intention was to do this dance. And that has remained part of the folklore of our seminary because, this is part of the heritage that we have. And can the dead have that kind of power to insist on their will being done in a funeral? What do you think? Are there any stories in Grenada that mirror that and that help us to understand that what some people might call the presence of the spirits is real? I prefer to think of it as an aspect of the communion of saints. We are too quick to label as evil any of these things. But sometimes it has more to do with the fact that people are still aware, they are still present to us. I certainly see that in my own family relationships. That the elders who have died, some of them at least, are very present to me. Sometimes I think they're present to me because they want me to pray for them. Other times I think they're present to me because they are praying for me. So that's part of it. So we continue to pray for the Okun family. There's part of it coming up on the television. Those of you who have video, wow, it's all in purple, brother. Fantastic. And quite a large number of priests. I presume these are all MSPs. Many of them would be MSPs who are there to support their brother in his moment of grief, in his moment of familial responsibility. And that is always a good thing to see. You wonder how they got all those vestments. Yes, we're not seeing Father Kufre as yet, but I presume he will come at the end of the procession. Yes, there he is. Yes. So we continue to pray for him. And there's his father's casket.
And also the link is up on the Good News Catholic page. So at any time you can go on and rewatch, or if you did not see it as yet, you'll be able to access it from Good News Catholic Communication Facebook page.
Good. Thanks a lot, technicians, wherever you are. Okay. Good.
And speaking of listeners, you speak, concerning the pick of the coffin, and they were not able to move. And sometimes it jars me that sometimes we do not want to make the connection between us and the spirits.
Us and the deceased, yes.
And it draws me there to the solemnity of the Assumption.
Well, it's an area where we really don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know. What we have is some experiences coming to life. I think I spoke about this in November last year a bit. But when you're talking about the dead, what goes on after death, we have some hints. We know, for example, when somebody is actually dying, there are certain things you look for. And some of them are physical and medical. Others, there's an aspect of it which points towards the continuation of life, that this is not the end, that our God is a God of the living. And that is an important truth, biblical truth, that God is a God of the living. So in him, all of us are alive. And because of the resurrection of Christ, we too hope for resurrection. What that means, again, a lot of people don't like to admit this about Christian truth, but a lot of it is a truth that is stated in very bare bones. What will it be like on the last day? What will heaven be like? We don't know. Some people have, I'm putting on my golden robe and so on. All of that is symbolic in the scriptures. When we talk resurrection, we are talking about a certain capacity to continue to relate.
Bishop, I'd like to once again express our condolences and sympathies to Father Emmanuel Kufre and his family back in Nigeria, the passing of the teacher of the family. So our prayers are with you, and we'll continue to be with you in prayer and spirit. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back, listeners and viewers, to Conversation with the Bishop. And as most of everyone know that, on the 15th, we celebrate the solemnity of the Assumption. What is to Catholics? I know each year we're supposed to go a level higher as to our understanding.
A level higher.
Yes, well, you know, as if each year we're supposed to go get a better understanding of our faith in terms of the solemnity of the Assumption.
Well, I don't know if I put it on an annual basis, but I think generally speaking, if you are practicing your faith, you should be growing.
Okay.
But one of the strange things about faith is that sometimes you have to become less in order to get more, so to speak. The Assumption is a major solemnity, a major feast in many of the countries of Europe. I think in one or two colonial countries that practice has continued, parts of Latin America, for example. But it's really a feast in honor of Mary, in which, and the feast is celebrated because of the proclamation by Pope Pius XII that Mary is assumed body and soul into heaven. Now, that is a complex doctrine in a way, but what it says, as simply as I can put it, Jesus, we believe, rose from the dead. And in rising from the dead, he went body and soul into the heavenly realms, so that Jesus is now, the way we put it, seated at the right hand of the Father. Now, what the church teaches flowing from that is because of the role of Mary in the plan of salvation, because her own body in our teaching was free from the stain of sin, she too is in her bodily form with God. You know, so the way we say she's assumed into heaven, because some in the tradition have a sense that she was taken up into heaven, that although she died, she breathed a last breath on earth. That last breath on earth led to being taken up into the right hand of God with her Son. So, assumed into heaven. But there's one aspect of that which I am when I think and pray about it, I get excited, because what it's saying is this, that Jesus was ascended into heaven and went into the fullness of the life of God without using spatial images. Because, and this is something which I try to emphasize on a number of feasts, because his body is in fact Mary's body. You think you could get at?
His body is Mary's body.
Your body is your mother's body. You took your flesh from your parents, and particularly from your mother. Right? So sometimes I say to people, when I tell you body of Christ on a feast of Mary, I could also say to you, this came from her. So it's a fascinating feast to contemplate, because it means that the body of a woman who was not, when you're talking Jesus' body, you're talking about a body that had no connection with original sin and so on. But Mary's body is the body of a woman, a girl, formed because of the interrelationship of Anna, St. Anne, and Joachim. And therefore, it's sharing in our total humanity. And what we're saying is that body which represents our humanity, in some ways our sinful humanity, that body is now also with God. So the Assumption is our hope. When we think of Jesus' ascension, okay, he was God. So when you think of Mary, she wasn't God. And yet the church teaches that she is assumed into heaven. So one day I go join she day. One day.
I'll pray that.
Yeah. You can pray that. Because I might stumble over the Jesus image, and I'm not like Jesus, I'm not, but she, because of Jesus, and that's something we must never forget, whatever happens to Mary happens because of her son. She is called Mother of God because she is the mother of Jesus, who is God. And these are little things that Catholics need to become more and more aware of. I'm afraid we don't hear it often enough. And even in our catechism classes, we haven't found the ways to draw children to ponder that and to believe it, but that's part of the task of catechetics.
That's true, Bishop. So we have some way to go still. No one. Moving on from the solemnity of the Assumption, we have what we would call it. We would call it rather Carnival, but rather a reflection of Carnival. I would like to say probably reflecting on the last 2 days.
Wow. How many days do you think Carnival are?
Carnival are basically 2 days.
2 weeks?
2 days. 2 days.
Yeah, but the other day you told me past 13 days.
Well, when I say for the past 13 days, there has been a lot of activities going on.
Oh.
For the last, I think the last activity was last night in the stadium. So that's why I said the last 13
So
days.
there's nothing this weekend for
I'm
Carnival?
not sure if that's up to Spice Mass, if they say, okay, we're having a cool down in the Carnival. But I think there is what you call real steel. The different pans band will be on the Carnage. But in essence, for the next 2 days, people will be probably heading to the beach, probably getting stuff to go back. But it has been, some people has been on the road.
Yes, some people already left. I understand
Yes.
it's almost impossible to get a flight out of Grenada if anything emergency comes up.
Yes. And then there is the whole issue with Air Canada threatening to strike.
I didn't hear about that.
Yes.
Yes, well, the Carnival Review, I don't know if anybody wants to call in on that, but it's an opportunity now for us to ask ourselves together, how has this Carnival been? What has been your experience of Carnival? You know, this year I had a particular experience which had me smiling through it all, where because of Father Kufre's absence, I'm holding down the cathedral. So on Carnival Monday morning, I had to be there for Mass at 7 o'clock. Now, getting to the cathedral for Mass at 7 o'clock from my house is impossible because these drivers, they come and they block up your driveway, they block up the whole road. So I knew that had happened in previous years. I couldn't think of getting. So I went and slept in the cathedral presbytery, getting into it. Although, that had its own challenges. But to get there, and then it was beautiful saying Mass with just about 10 people, about 9 people. I was very happy that those people came because I saw the Mass as a moment to unite myself and the congregation with the God who is there. And that is something I wanted to say. God is there in the midst of all of that. God doesn't hide his face and say, oh God, look at all them sinners, I don't want to see them. No. God sees. God never hides his face from us. How he responds, and this is where on occasions like that, I offer the Mass and in a spirit of faith that God knows what's going on. And what happened to me on Monday morning was that as I was thinking that, I was also thinking of the Middle East and of Ukraine, that if I could say that God wasn't hiding his face from what was happening on the Carnage, he wasn't hiding his face from what was happening in Ukraine either. And that for me is part of the God we believe in, And I came across a beautiful idea the other day which struck me as one possibility. I don't think it's the answer to everything, but it says, the humility of our God, in that although he knows the nonsense that's going on, he does not show power. I go teach them a lesson. It goes on and he is there. We believe that because he is there, it's sustained. And he is walking with us towards that kingdom moment, towards the final parousia, and trusting in the power of creation to redeem and to be redeemed, it's something you have to try and wrap your head around, because many of us don't wrap our heads around anything. We just let it come at us, and then we either accept it or we get vexed about it. But it's an awesome thought that I believe in a God who is so humble that he allows me to do all the rubbish I do, make all the mistakes that I make, and yet trusts me in that loving. An amazing thought.
No, Bishop. I don't think God will ever hide his face from us. And they said, because after all, we are his creation.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe he's constantly there watching us.
Wow, you're a man of faith, my dear Kiso.
Constantly there.
Yes. The psalmist says, hide not your face. You know, so that means there are always people who think of God as not seeing, you know. God have a cookie eye when it comes to some things.
No, because we have to, if we go back into the scriptures, what did Jesus do? Whose house he went to?
Mm-hmm.
So I think God is also showing us here, you know, sometimes if you want to see a change, you have to go in the midst of whatever it is you think is not going right or is not happening right. And you have to communicate with them and then show them how you think.
Yeah. On Carnival Tuesday, when I looked at a little bit on television, the expression came to me, halting the slide, turning the tide. Halting the slide, turning the tide. Right?
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, there's a slide that has been taking place in our islands, you know. As a child, women playing mass was women dressed up in what we call the Martinican, you know, full dress with and I mean, it used to be real fun. They would be on the back of a truck, or they would be parading behind a music band. But the women always were in the midst of the playing mass, reflecting a certain dignity. You know, today, there's no dignity in it at all. You know.
Wouldn't say there's no
Oh,
dignity.
well, I'd love you to explain to me what's the dignity in some bare behinds.
I wouldn't say there's no dignity. One, you see, I looked at it differently. One, we have to understand with the advent of the whole being comfortable in my skin, the whole advent of, you know, I can do whatever.
Yeah, but I don't mind you being comfortable in your skin, but why you have to show me your skin to be comfortable in your skin?
But I'm getting to that. You see, and I said again, we do not, while we look on, we do not wish to be the change that we wish to see sometimes, you know. And when I say that, remember for the past few years, Missy Chrissy had a wonderful band, the Silamas.
Who?
Missy Chrissy, son of Washington.
Yes.
Right. But I asked myself when I looked at
what did she do this year? Did she do anything this year?
No, because the support is not there. I looked at it, you know. There are many of us who said, oh, this is not the way that it should be played. And we had an opportunity to be part of it and show how it should be played and enjoyed it. And we did not support, so therefore it cannot be sustained. You see, that's the thing. While we may want to see something, we have to be willing to go out there and sustain it. And the lack of sustenance, therefore, we hide behind, oh yes, no, this should be this should be that. But at the end of the day, we can only talk. And if we do not wish to put ourselves in there, then sometimes we lose our when I did local stand there, we lose the ground to stand on. And I think that it was an opportunity missed, according to Trump, bigly. For us to be part of it and show, yes, this is how you can enjoy mass.
Well, I wasn't aware that it had been scrapped completely. But yeah, what you're saying is true, you know. So that is where my question of halting the slide comes in, because I don't think that we're going to do anything effective unless we are there in the midst of it. right? We just leave it to the devil, so to speak. Well, that's something for the citizens to decide. I mean, the same thing is true of the whole jab thing. How far do you go with jab if you want to call yourself a jab nation? What are the positive energies present in jab that you can talk to your children about and that you yourself can proclaim? If jab is only about this freedom that some people like to say it's about, But there are some important things that the church has to teach there. For instance, when you come to talk freedom is not just freedom to do whatever you want to do. Freedom is freedom to be the best you can be. And that is where the traps are, the traps that stop you from fully expressing who you are in all the depth and the beauty of your being. And I was asking myself this year whether we on a slide, downward slide, I mean, people told me about jab being totally nude. Where are you getting that from? That's not part of the heritage. The jabless was a pretty figure because it was a seductive figure. That's what people don't know. They don't know their history. So, and then we have to be very careful what we say and do, because we love black and we're proud to be black. But what are we saying in the way we portray black? I've been in touch over the past few years with one or two band leaders, and I know there are some band leaders who are thinking how to turn the jab thing into something productive, and but that's not easy. That's not easy. And if people like you watch the young people doing the jab thing, and there's no consciousness there. You're just being lost in the beat. Now there's an interesting challenge there, and somebody put it to me the other day. They said that in some of the African tradition, the very beat of the drum is a call to deeper processes in your mind and your heart. That I find fascinating. But who are the people who are exploring the drum as a call to deeper meditation? Who are the people who are listening to the drum in ways that open up their consciousness, right? And there is a tremendous challenge, because there are some ways in which the drum opens up your consciousness to destructive forces. But there are also ways in which the drum, properly done, can open up your consciousness to beauty and energy and so on. There's a guy, Mr. Bedo in Trinidad, who is a great drummer. I don't know, I was hoping that at some point in time, Tivoli drummers might do something that would enable me to recognize some of what I knew in Mr. Bedo. I haven't been able to find that as yet.
Okay.
See, but turning the tide, halting the slide. I think those two images, when they came to me, I said, yeah, that's it. Halting the slide so we don't go down into the gutter. But then you have to turn the tide so that the more beautiful aspects of it are not lost.
Oh, no, Bishop. If we wish to do that, we have to be ready to go in the midst of it. And while we focus on that, I also like to focus on also the positives. As I saw a report yesterday from the RGPF which stated that it was relatively safe. It was safe. There was, as when people gather, there will be a few conflicts, which was easily managed. There was no big disruption to any of the season over the past few days. So I think we must also commend people on this. Yes.
And you see, we mustn't be slow to do that, but there is, well, I could just come back to this, that the RGPF and the no violence cannot be the norm that we live with. Right? What I'm suggesting is that there are deeper norms. Well, it's one of the things that the church still has to deal with, and I don't know how we're going to deal with it. You know, as I was thinking of Father Kufre's father's funeral and the whole business of the different ways in which Africans mourned, you know, and whether or not in the drum we are able to hear something that touches the soul. There are people in this society who still think of the drum as nothing less than the devil's workshop. That's not the only thing that the drum is, but can the church get into that? You know, Peter Telfer in Trinidad, he's now dead, God rest his soul. But he did some fantastic things. And that O Creator song has become part of the legacy of church music here. But because Peter is no more, I'm not hearing any further explorations on that, you know. So we have work to do.
Yes, we do. We do. And, you know, now that Carnival is over, many people are here referring to it as Ash Wednesday. I say no, it's probably a day relaxation and reflect, plan ahead, you know, and start looking at the rest of the year. How do we move from Carnival into the rest of the year? How do we get our children back ready for school? You know, the various things. For me, it's not Ash Wednesday. Ash Wednesday is February, March, around there.
But why can't it be Ash Wednesday in July or August? You know, but before we go there, I just want to say one thing, because I was part of something on Carnival Sunday, which really pleased me greatly, and that was the family reunion of the Jones family from Fontenoy. They all came from wherever they came from, but they came to Mass at the cathedral. And I felt that was a very, very important sign. I understand there were one or two other parishes in which families came together. And that is great, that in the midst of the carnival, in the midst of what you were referring to earlier, you know, here are people understanding that as I said to them in my homily, I was happy because from the time I came to Grenada, I saw these things happening in the funerals, you know. So families, you see the families at the funerals, having to put off a funeral for a month so that family members can come. That is all part of the heritage of the country, the spiritual heritage of the country. So to come together for Carnival and to come together and bring your children and grandchildren, there were 3 or 4 generations at that Mass. You know? And I was saying to one of the patriarchal figures that I hope you're all telling the stories at the same time, you know, so that it is in that context that I really have been asking myself, can the church celebrate? We don't have to call it Ash Wednesday. We're not giving out ashes. But we can find a way in which we invite all those who have come for Carnival, right, to come together on Ash Wednesday or the following Sunday in the church to celebrate, to give thanks to God for who they are, to give thanks to God for the positive things that they experience over the Carnival season. In other words, when you look at Ash Wednesday, right, it was a question of taking these 2 days of revelry and honoring them in the church afterwards. Can we do the same thing now and develop, because we have a tremendous task of developing a Caribbean religious culture for today. And I think this is one way in which maybe the Catholic Church can make a contribution.
No, Bishop, there used to be a social around, I can't remember if it was the Saturday before Carnival or the Saturday after, Catholics can cook.
That was the Saturday before Carnival.
Yes, so I think the timing was a little bit off because people are going, they're here, they're going to different, probably if it was the Saturday after, then you could get them to come, and it would be a nice get together, a nice old friends meet and so on.
Well, I wasn't only thinking of that kind of thing. As a matter of fact, that kind of thing is best done on this Saturday before Carnival when people are still here. But to do something liturgically right? You could eat afterwards, after the event, but to do something that really celebrates. There used to be a practice called the Ember Days. It was linked to planting fruits and so on, you know. We still have something like that around Corpus Christi. But so we really need to think this thing through and to see how best we can do it.
Yes. So, Bishop, we'll take a quick break and we say good morning to Wilma Habeen and Agnes McSween, who is on the live and who commented. We say good morning to you and I hope that you're having a wonderful morning. So,
where are they?
They did not say where they're from, and hopefully they will comment it in the comment by the time we get back. So we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll have the reading of the gospel and the commentary by Bishop. We'll take a quick break and be right back. Welcome back, listeners and viewers, to Conversation with the Bishop. And we are here this morning and we have been having a conversation. So if you missed it, you can always go back and listen to the recording. However, as it is customary at this time, we'll have the reading of the gospel and Bishop will give a short commentary on the gospel, which will help us prepare for our weekend masses and also put us in that frame of mind as to what it is we are going to church for on Sundays. Okay. So the gospel is taken from the gospel according to Luke chapter 12, verses 49 to 53. Jesus said to his disciples, "I have come to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were blazing already. There is a baptism I must still receive, and how great is my distress till it is over. Do you suppose that I am here to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, a household of 5 will be divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. The father divided against the son against the father, mother against daughter, daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, daughter-in-law against mother-in-law." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Wow. You know, there are some people who have heard this passage once in their life. And they have said that to me because the once in their life when they heard it was the once in their life when they were quarreling with somebody or when they were feeling betrayed by somebody. The in-law question is a very common question in our families, you know, where somebody marries into the family and you have to accept them. They have to feel part of the family. They have to feel welcome. Or many a young woman getting married to a young man goes to meet his mother for the first time without trembling. You know, in some family situations, the question of being accepted by is a very important question. And I myself, as a priest, I often say to young people when they come to get married, I said, I say to young women all the time, look at how he treats his mother, right? And if you have problems with the way he treats his mother, you have to ask yourself whether they will come when he won't treat you the same way, and then what? You know? So that tension within family is part and parcel of life, and we have to be aware of it, and we have to some extent to prepare ourselves for it. And some young women that I have known, they have made it a point, you know, to get to know their prospective mother-in-law before they get married, you know. And then, of course, you have the challenge that comes with the mother-in-law growing older, and then what? But what is important in this passage is that it comes after this tremendous injunction from Jesus. I have come to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were blazing already. There is a baptism I must still receive, and how great is my distress till it is over. And they talk about peace on earth and the households comes after that injunction. You know, fire on earth. For the Bible, fire is a very important image. You know, you think of the people of Israel traveling through the desert after their liberation from Egypt. And what happens? God is in their midst as a pillar of fire, right? And there are a number of other instances where the fire image symbolizes the presence of God. I've come to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were blazing already. To meditate on that, to allow that image to sink into your consciousness, not as something to be feared, but as something to be open to. Why? Because fire does not only destroy, fire also purifies, you know. So, and some of us know that fire can be something you look forward to with some enjoyment. People talk about hot, 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 you know. That's one image. But what you also know is that the hot, hot, hot image can very often mean that through the pores in your body is expelling all kinds of toxins. And it is because of the fire within that these toxins expelled allow you to feel more healthy. So that after you finish sweating a good sweat and you go into the shower to wash off the sweat, it's a different experience. And this is where I, you know, for the first time this time, I saw a link here which I hadn't seen before. I've come to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were blazing already, and then there is a baptism I must still receive. So there's a sense that after the fire comes the baptism. And are we open to that? Are we open to the fire that threatens to consume, but really only opens up the pores and allows you to become more receptive to the full experience of the baptism, which is not simply pouring some water on the side of your head, but dipping you in it. Wow. Let me put a little challenge to you. The last time you're feeling really sweaty, maybe, I was thinking maybe somebody coming home from work after a hard day's work, and you're passing by a beach or so, just to be able to take off the clothes, get into the water with some kind of bath suit on, of course, and just have that experience of the fire giving way to the baptism, the fire giving way to the being dipped in the water, and you come up refreshed. You see, all of these things point to concrete experiences which open us up to the beauty of what Christian faith invites us to. You know, of course, when we talk about the baptism of Jesus, we're talking about something else as well. There's a baptism I must still receive, and how great is my distress till it is over. All the scholars tell us that he's referring there to his own suffering and death on the cross, because the image with the baptism primarily is the image of being dipped into And as one person, one adult whom I baptized once said to me, it's being dipped, yes, Bishop, but when you see I get dipped and I'm struggling because you hold my head in the water, says when I come up, I'm gasping for air. And that's distressing. That is distressing. So you have that moment when you're not too sure whether you're alive or whether you're dead. But you come up out of that water and you take a deep breath. The Spirit is within you. So this is one of those passages which you don't just enter in by saying, well, what does Jesus mean here? No, you enter into it by closing your eyes, thinking about what it is saying, and allow the Lord to guide you through an experience which allows you then to take the whole thing into account. When I am being overworked, when the fire is taking me on, I'm in one place. Then the water takes me up into another place. But when I come into that other place, I realize that there is all this division that has to be healed. And I have a part to play in that healing. So I'm not afraid of my mothers-in-law and my brothers-in-law and my daughter, my son. I'm not afraid of any of these challenges that life always brings, because I trust that having been consumed by fire and dipped in the water, I'm able to face anything that I have to face. On that note, one final point. Baptism is not about having things nice and easy. Wherever the Lord is, there will be moments of division and conflict and so on. But wherever the Lord is, those moments of division and conflict are entered into against the backdrop of the Lord who calls us, who sets our hearts on fire, and who dips us in the waters of baptism. Amen.
Amen, Bishop, and thank you very much for your commentary. And I think that leads us directly into, in life, there are things that may not go our way all the time, and also sometimes in life there are paths that on the road that we meet that are difficult. And I can show as a priest you can identify it, and it leads us into Father Ronald's silver ordination anniversary, which will be celebrated tomorrow at St. Michael.
Yes, St. Michael's Church in Woburn
at 5:30 p.m. So it brings us, and we want to say happy anniversary to Father Ronald in advance. And Bishop, will be celebrated or con-celebrated?
No, well, it's funny, interesting things about these occasions. The bishop must never overshadow the priest who is celebrating. Like if you notice that Father Kufre's father's funeral, he presided. There was no sign of any bishop in the procession. Okay. Because usually on such occasions, the liturgy suggests that particularly the bishop of the diocese sits in the sanctuary, participates in the Mass and so on, and only really says something at the end.
Okay.
Sometimes the chief celebrant might ask the bishop to preach, but that's not the common thing.
Okay. So we do have a caller on the line. Don't mean to cut you.
Okay, sure.
Good morning, caller, and welcome.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Morning, Bishop.
Good morning, sister.
How are you all?
We are coping.
All right. So I just wanted to add a little something to your commentary on that gospel. Every time I hear that gospel, actually it gives me chills. It always, moves me. And I think one of the things that fire represents for us is passion. Listen to any soca tune, right? And this particular gospel, when I read it, when I hear it, one of the things that always comes back to me is where it says, "Zeal for your house will devour me or consume me." I think sometimes when I think about it, that fire that he wished were blazing all now maybe is that zeal for his Father's house, that passion for the things that are of God. Yeah, that's it for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, yeah, but can you say anything more about this passion?
Can I say anything more about this?
Passion.
Passion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that if it is indeed blazing, if it is indeed a fire, if it is indeed something that fire is something that we think of as destructive, but it also, as you said, purifies. It creates warmth, and it creates something else as well.
Mm-hmm.
People draw towards it. People are drawn to it.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that drawing together, creates something else. It creates networks, it creates relationship, it creates intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
And that is supposed to spread out. There's another song that comes to mind, it only takes a spark.
Oh.
And that is supposed to be about, spreading God's love out, sharing something that is warm and something that is good. But somehow, we have become content over the years to be very conservative and very pious and be very quiet, and we try to suppress that zeal even when we see it in our young people, which is one of the things I think turns them away.
Well, could you think about Rose Calypso in this context?
Fire.
Yes, in your wire, ay, oy.
Dame mucha agua.
Good. You remember the Spanish? Dame mucho agua. What was the last lines? Feast for soul or fat for soul?
Yeah. And again, that was something that this the character in her Calypso was running through the streets shouting, "Fire, fire!" And people were coming out to hear what she was saying. So maybe that's what we need to be doing, running through the streets shouting, "Fire, fire!"
Thank you, caller. Thank you for.
Okay, all right.
Look forward to hearing from you again next week, God's willing.
Okay.
Okay, Bishop. So as you're just finishing off with Father Ronald's ordination, and we would like to say happy anniversary to him, and we hope that the Mass is fruitful and that we'll be carrying it live also.
Actually, Father Charles Dominique also celebrates his anniversary on that day, but he celebrated it in Barbados, I think a week ago. And he has served here and served well. He was prior at St. Paul's for a while. So we wish him happy anniversary as well. So Father Ronald, we're going to be looking forward to seeing you tomorrow in all your fancy dress and so on.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Bishop. And as we come to the end, I think we have Bishop might have a question for us as Catholics.
Well, yes, I suppose I can ask this here. After the Thursday session, somebody asked me, well, do I think that the parishes are communities or are they a set of cliques? Wow. That is a very interesting question. And I felt I shouldn't be answering that to somebody who's a part of the diocese. I should be getting you to answer that. You who are listening to me now, it's a pity it's not, we not, perhaps when we come back to an evening session, we might ask it again. But for you all, what I keep hearing a lot is that sometimes people have this wonderful sense, like yesterday in the cathedral, some of the folks who were at a parish meeting there were talking about how the Emancipation Day celebration was such a wonderful celebration. People came out dressed in their ancestral wear and so on, but really engaging with each other, and that is so important. But do we do that naturally? Do we have a sense that when I come to my parish on a Sunday, I'm coming to my parish to meet my brothers and sisters? You know, that is a very, very important point to bear in mind, because that is what it's supposed to be, a meeting of brothers and sisters. So how do we make that more possible, more part of the inheritance that is ours in Jesus Christ?
Amen, Bishop. So I guess this is a question for us to reflect on, a question for us to contemplate, and to ask ourselves, where are we now? And what exactly do we want to be? Do we want to be a community or a clique? So, as we come to the end, we will end with a Jubilee prayer, Bishop.
Well, yes.
I don't know if there's anything you would like to say before the prayer, or if you have something.
Well, hopefully next week we will have the prayer for the election of a new bishop.
Okay.
And I hope that we can have that printed this week, and it will be available.
Okay. So, we all know, if you all want to hear who's a new bishop, you have to stay tuned to GNCC. And
for another year.
Well, for whenever. All they have to, that's why I say they have to stay tuned. So they just have to stay tuned. We don't know when, as the Bible says, it may come like a thief in the night. So
let's hope we don't thief a bishop.
So thank you, Bishop, for being with us. Thank you, our viewers and our callers, for calling in. It was a meaningful contribution, and to our those who comment, I'd like to say good morning to Miss Josephine. And we still haven't heard from where the commenters are from, but we say thank you for commenting. We will now have the Jubilee prayer.
Seriously. You go ahead.
Okay. Father in heaven, may the faith you have given us in your Son, Jesus Christ, our brother, and the flame of charity, enkindled in our hearts by the Holy Spirit, reawaken in us the blessed hope for the coming of your kingdom.
May your grace transform us into tireless cultivators of the seed of the gospel. May these seeds transform from within both humanity and the whole cosmos in the sure expectation of a new heaven and a new earth, when, with the powers of evil vanquished, your glory will shine eternally.
May the grace of the Jubilee reawaken in us pilgrims of hope, a yearning for the treasures of heaven. May that same grace spread the joy and peace of our Redeemer throughout the earth. To you, our God, eternally blessed, be glory and praise forever. Amen. So as we end, we'll now leave you with the Jubilee song. Thank you, and look forward to seeing you next week.